Okay, so we're here at Microsoft Ignite. Hopefully you can hear me above the road noise. It's day 4 today, penultimate day. It's gone really quickly this week. Loads of news, loads of announcements, loads of stuff going on. You know, it's just incredible how much comes out of just a few short days here in Orlando. For those of you that couldn't make it, I'm sure you've been following on social media, but if you haven't, just thought we'd take a few minutes out to go through some of the key technical announcements that we've seen come out of the last couple of days. Way too much stuff for us to go into in a short video, so we'll be communicating more of this stuff over the next kind of days and weeks in a bit more detail. But in the meantime, sit back and enjoy. These are our top takeaways from Ignite in 2019. Okay, so for those of you that are busy embracing and adopting Teams in your organisations, there's been a whole host of announcements this week around Teams. One of the biggest for us is the news that Microsoft 365 Business Voice is now available. So for those of you not aware, that's the ability to now add on that enterprise voice, telephony in the cloud capability to your M365 business licenses, where previously you'd have had to upgrade to either E3 with an add-on or E5. So hugely advantageous for those organisations of sub 300 seats that want to look at telephony in the cloud. We've also seen the launch of private channels in Teams. Those have started to roll out today. So you can now create channels within the context of a team with a restricted view to certain people of chats and files and so on. And there's a whole bunch of other things. So we've got pop-out chat windows coming in Q1 next year, pop-out meeting windows at the same time. We've got an app edition coming to Teams that's going to consolidate tasks from To-Do and Planner into that Teams interface. So a whole bunch of innovation coming around Teams. Unsurprising given the focus that Microsoft are putting on it, but from our perspective, really nice to see some of those incremental changes coming through this week at Ignite. Now, another bit of news that I wanted to touch on very briefly relates to Windows Autopilot. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar, Windows Autopilot allows us to, as IT, procure a device on behalf of the user, have that device shipped to the end user, and on receipt of that device and sign in with their Azure AD credentials, that device becomes subject to corporate management. So it's enrolled into Intune, it's registered with Azure AD, it receives corporate applications, corporate policies. It's very in keeping with this whole notion of modern management. It's also very efficient for IT. It's zero touch. It's a nice experience for the end user. It's a fantastic feature. But one of the limitations that we've had for quite some time now relates to those organisations that need to have devices joined to a traditional AD. Now that's supported with an autopilot. We can configure domain join as part of the profile. But the assumption is that the device at the point it goes through that autopilot process is on the corporate LAN. And clearly that isn't always the case and isn't in keeping with this whole notion of internet-based modern management. But that's all changing come Q1 next year. So the announcement today was the availability of support for offline domain join over VPN delivered through an autopilot profile. So come next year, we'll be able to deliver devices directly to end users, have those users go through the traditional autopilot process, but at the end of that process be joined to a traditional Active Directory subject to corporate policies, connected over VPN. It's a really significant feature addition. It might sound minor, but this is significant for organisations that are at any scale and who really want to leverage autopilot and modern management. So keep your eyes peeled. It's due Q1 next year. We'll provide more information when it becomes available. But yeah, something we're very excited about. So one of the brand new products that was launched at Ignite this week was Azure Arc. And Azure Arc's been launched by Microsoft in response to those organisations that have got workloads running in a bunch of different clouds. They might be public clouds in the form of Google and AWS, might be private clouds on-prem. And in much the same way as Azure Stack, when it was launched, was designed to cater for those mixed environments with on-prem and Azure infrastructure, what Arc does is it gives organisations that have got that mix of public cloud workloads, that single pane of glass, and likewise for on-prem, to manage all of their infrastructure and, in an ideal world, be much more efficient, much more responsive to those different changing workloads. So another brand new product that was launched at Ignite was Project Cortex. Now Cortex is all about surfacing information. It's followed that trend of machine learning that's pervaded throughout the whole week of Ignite this year. And what Cortex is designed to do, it's obviously going to evolve as it matures in the coming months. What it's designed to do is to surface information across the suite of Office products and across Azure. And the idea is that it points you at relevant bits of information, relevant bits of content at the point where it's relevant to you without you having to step out of the application you're in and go elsewhere. 2019 at Ignite has also been the year for Power Platform, and there's two really key announcements that we're taking away and we're excited to use when we get back. First of those is Power Virtual Agents. Now, much the same way as Power Apps is designed to support low-code, no-code business application creation, Power Virtual Agents are designed to do pretty much the same thing, low-code, no-code, but with the view to creating virtual agents for use in contact centers. Designed to be GUI driven, simple to use, really a tool that can be given to the people that are ultimately responsible for using these things in contact centres. So really powerful application that we're going to be picking up when we get back to the UK. Second big announcement in the Power Platform is Power Automate. Now Power Automate in one sense is just a rebrand of what was Microsoft Flow. So it's a process automation tool that you can use to build up in a graphical interface, simplistic flows and automation routines. A big change though, and the reason for the rebrand, is that they now introduce robotic process automation. So it's much more intelligent, much more capable, and we're expecting to be able to use it in much more versatile, much more flexible ways than we were before. So another really exciting bit of news, two really key things in the Power Platform that we'll be looking to use when we get back. So one of the more significant bits of news that came out of Ignite this year, certainly from a modern workplace perspective, came out of Brad Anderson's Modern Management keynote on Tuesday. And that news really centred on the fact that moving forwards, Config Manager, as was, Intune, as was, are coming together under a new unified brand called Microsoft Endpoint Manager. Now, Endpoint Manager, at face value, is really just a rebrand, what we would argue. It's there to dispel some of the legacy concerns around the Intune brand. It's there to counter some of the speculation around the future of Config Manager. But actually, if you watch the keynote, and I'd really encourage you to, there was some really good context that was set by Brad around actually some of the underlying logic behind that coming together. And really that centres on better integration between those two products with a view to actually driving efficiencies through larger organisations by allowing those organisations to take advantage of some of those really key features that exist, in some cases only in Intune, but in other cases only in Config Manager. So it's really a promotion piece around co-management. And the underlying message is actually that co-management isn't just there to support migration from legacy old Config Manager to modern new Intune. It's there to support this notion of two products working together to ultimately provide the best of both worlds. One other really significant bit of news that was linked with that was around licensing. So for those organisations that are licensed with Config Manager today, you now get a free entitlement to use Intune for Windows devices that really mirrors the equivalent use rights that are available in Intune today that allow you to deploy SCCM. So whichever side of that fence you sit on today, you've now got the ability to use both Config Manager and Intune with no additional uplift. So the underlying message is that co-management is a good thing. It was a fairly unexpected announcement, but one that I think from our point of view is really positive, and hopefully will drive some really good utilisation of those two products moving forwards. So the final bit of news that we want to share with you from Ignite this year relates to migration, and it's actually two things. So one of the challenges that we come across all the time when it comes to M&A type activity relates to both user migration in terms of synchronising identities from those distributed environments into Office 365, but also to the actual migration of data. And there's been two announcements this week that we think are really key in addressing those challenges. So the first of those things relates to identity, and specifically that process of migrating users or consolidating and synchronizing users from multiple distributed AD environments into Azure AD. Now to date, the way to do that has always been with AD Connect, that service that we all know and love. But actually the challenge with Azure AD Connect is that you can only have one instance synchronized to any given Azure AD tenant. So when it comes to that M&A piece of activity, that acquisition, and you want to synchronize those users, the first thing you're going to do is get that environment onto the same network as that AD Connect server, and that isn't always feasible. Now, one of the announcements that came out this week, it was announced in Alex Simon's Identity keynote earlier in the week. It relates to this ability to migrate from multiple distributed environments into a single Azure AD tenant. So there's a new service that's going to be available in the early part of next year, where you're going to be able to have a many-to-one relationship when it comes to this synchronization endpoint and Azure AD. So it's game-changing when it comes to this whole process of consolidating users from multiple distributed environments into a single Azure AD tenant. So that's a big piece for us. Now the second activity that we wanted to touch on relates to the migration of data. And again, I think one of the significant challenges that we come up against all the time is where you've got organisations that have taken the plunge, moved to cloud, but actually on the back of something like an acquisition have to consolidate multiple tenants into one. And one of the really challenging areas is actually mailbox migration. There's third-party tools available, there's ways of doing it, but it's not straightforward, it's not simple. Now, on the back of a session today, we're now aware of a service that Microsoft are developing that's going to be launched in the very first part of next year. That's going to support cross-tenant mailbox moves. So again, a really significant piece of news that we're really excited about. So it's going to do away with a whole bunch of those third-party tools. It's going to make that process of consolidating mailboxes between distributed Office 365 tenants much simpler. And that's it. That's Ignite 2019 over and done with. So it's been a really exciting week. Loads of announcements, as I said at the start of this video. I'm really excited over the next 12 months or so to start to put some of those things into action. Obviously there's a whole bunch of things that we haven't touched on in this video, and there'll be more news coming out of us over the next few weeks around other stuff that we've learned over the last few days. But ultimately we're excited to move forward. We'll be back next year, and obviously any questions on the back of the things that we've mentioned in this video today, do get in touch, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.